So Foo Fighters' newest album, which is actually their 10th album now, called Medicine at Midnight, it released just this last Friday. And since then, I've listened to Medicine at Midnight through the whole entire album a total of 3 times. So, objectively speaking, here's what I can say about what's in Foo Fighters' newest album. So, the very first song, Making a Fire, actually has Dave Grohl's one daughter performing backing vocals. They have a song that's very much in the same sound as Metallica. They have an acoustic song, which is basically about growing up in the life of war. And the majority of the album has a groove rhythm to it. So, objectively speaking, as well as Dave Grohl's natural growl is reoccurring in it. It's not the whole way through the whole album, but it's reoccurring. So, subjectively, my personal opinion on their newest 10th album, Medicine at Midnight, I can say, after having listened to the whole album the whole way through 3 times since Friday, I can subjectively say, and keep in mind, I am a fan of Foo Fighters, but hands down, this is one of their best and strongest works to date, album-wise. Out of all 10 albums, their second album, The Color and the Shape, I would hands down deem a 10 out of 10. It is damn near perfect. Medicine at Midnight is also one of their all-time best albums. And I say this because, and a lot of people are going to give me crap for this, but I say this because the majority of Foo Fighters albums they range between being way over long to just feeling like a slog. And by that, I mean, by the halfway point of a Foo Fighters album, they usually sound kind of like repetitious, sounding the same. It's not bad. Like, Dave Grohl will never, ever be able to make a terrible, bad song, okay? At the very least, Dave Grohl makes okay music. That's just a fact at this point. 10 albums in, and there's not a single song that you can put on your speaker and you won't love it to death. Now, with that being said, like I just said, going through an entire album, most of the time, their whole album lengths do feel like a bit of a slog and a chore to go through. But not in The Color and the Shape, especially, and definitely not in Medicine at Midnight either. And I think the reason why these two stick out the most is because they really diversify the sound. The Color and the Shape, to me, was their emo era. Medicine at Midnight, to me, is one of their strongest alternative rock eras. And by that, I mean they do an acoustic song, they do groove songs, they do a Metallica-esque song, which we'll get into that song as well because I have some things to say about individual songs. But they end the song so melodically too, with basically Chasing Birds and Love Dies Young, basically 2 or 3 songs as epilogues, kind of prefacing that life moves on. Keep moving forward. The future is always there. It's always brighter than today, and especially yesterday. So as I stated, the very first song in the album, Making a Fire, one of the backtracker vocals is Dave Grohl's own daughter. And every single song in this album is solid at the very least. I will have to say and preface this that their very first single that they released, Shame Shame, it doesn't grip me nearly as much as the other ones do. Okay, major highlights for me, I would say Medicine at Midnight, the title track. Waiting on a War, which I like acoustic songs. They're never really my top favorites to go to, but I thoroughly enjoy Waiting on a War. It has a great acoustic riff to it. It has mesmerizing lyrics, and that's the number one thing you can always say about Dave Grohl's music. The lyrics are top-notch, and I know this is subjective, but at this point, I think it's safe to say Dave Grohl is a way better lyricist than Kurt Cobain. Nothing against Kurt Cobain, but Dave Grohl's lyrics, they speak out to so many more people, not just people having problems in life. He ranges his music and his lyrics far past just I'm depressed. Okay, Foo Fighters' second album, The Color and the Shape, and even their first album, that was in their troubling, emo, I'm depressed, I'm sad times. But after that, when they started to really hit stardom, they wanted to expand. And in doing so, what they would always do every single album, and this is what I do appreciate about Dave Grohl, who lived his life how I'm living my life. He taught himself every single instrument, every single growling technique, everything by himself. He taught himself every instrument, and more specifically, he taught himself how to play guitar and bass and everything. Basically, how he taught himself how to play drums. He has stated this in interviews. You can look it up on YouTube. He basically says the way he taught himself how to play guitar, this is his kick drum, this is his hi-hat stick, this is his snare stick, and he just plays just like that. He just comes up the rhythms on the guitar. And as far as the other musicians, keyboards, you know, the keyboardist, the pianist, whatever you want to call him, he does a good job, and they also go into interviews and they make jokes about how he's the only one that actually knows music. He's the only one that actually has learned and studied notation and everything. The bass and the lead guitar is always solid, always, you know, it's really funny. With Foo Fighters, it's honestly Dave Grohl. He's the rhythm guitarist, and honestly, he's still the lead guitarist. Nothing against Chris Shiflett, but honestly, Dave Grohl is the soul of this band. I would say it's Dave Grohl and then Taylor Hawkins being a very close second. Taylor Hawkins usually helms backing vocals, but helms mostly the drums. And the drums, honestly, they do their job. In this album, I would say Taylor Hawkins does an adequate job. Nowhere near as great as the likes of Everlong or Best of You, but it's still very strong drum riffs and drum tracks. Pat Smear, another rhythm guitarist. I mean, nothing against the dude. I think he's a good guitarist, but let's be honest. You see him on stage, you see him at interviews, he's there for the ride. He's along for the trip. He's just having fun, and that's great. That's what music is for. It's meant to just have fun. No matter what critics say, music is just about how you feel. It's your passion. It's how you feel, what you want to do with it. Even if you sound like utter garbage in a garage, that's fine. It's still music. Why is it still music? It still reaches out to you personally. And more specifically, if you got out there, you showed even just your close friends, it could potentially reach out to all of them, if not at least one of them. And for me, Medicine at Midnight, it reaches out to an abundance of people, in my personal belief. They have so many diverse songs in Medicine at Midnight. The majority of the tracks do have an 80s groove rhythm to them, but then they have hard-ish sounding tracks like No Son of Mine, which, like I said, it sounds a lot like a Metallica-made song. The problem I have with No Son of Mine, it's a great track. But the problem I have with it is I feel listening to it, I feel like you can hear the adolescence behind the instrumentals. Like, the beginning of the song starts out with dun 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 dun, and that's great, but I feel like I just hear that Dave Grohl was trying to do more, and it sounds like he wants to do like really fast rhythmic struts and strums like James Hetfield does on his guitar. But I feel like with Dave Grohl's, I don't want to degrade him, because he is one of my top favorite musicians. But at the same time, it does come to push to shove where if you're not taught by professionals, it's going to show sooner or later. And in No Son of Mine, unfortunately, the proficiency behind his guitarist's skills does show. It's still a great track. He's still an excellent musician. Okay, I have nothing but respect and admiration for Dave Grohl. Okay, I have T-shirts of Foo Fighters, him in the middle. I have a Nirvana T-shirt with him in it. I've covered Everlong on drums, on bass. I can scream Best of You exactly how he screams it live. Okay, I love Foo Fighters. I love Dave Grohl. I love his music. I love that he is a great all-around nice guy. He's never once been in a scandal or anything. So understand, I'm not trying to like degrade his character or anything. I'm just trying to come at this album as objectively and subjectively as I can. And this isn't me bashing this album. I'm telling you right now, go out, purchase this album. At the very least, download it on any streaming service. They still get revenue from listening to their music. Now, overall, what I can say is Medicine at Midnight is hands down one of their strongest albums to date, which is weird because this is their 10th one, 26 years later, I believe, since they started up, since Dave Grohl was just chugging along after Nirvana's end, chugging along in his mother's basement, just recording the first album that inevitably became Foo Fighters' self-titled first album. And honestly, the first time I listened through the album, with my one friend as well, we both agreed and settled that it sounded like a 7 out of 10. Solid. It's a good album. Second playthrough, I really got into it. It really hooked me, and it made me increase it to an 8. I literally just listened to this album for a third time right before this review. And I can't get past how insanely, amazingly diverse this album is. Sure, there are a lot of songs that just sound groovy, but even within the groove songs is still some alternative, diverse music in them. And they have groovy, they have metal-ish, they have acoustic, they have mesmerizing lyrics, they have mostly proficient instrumental skills behind and helming the music and the tracks and the sound. So for me, overall, the positives far, far, far outweigh the negatives, especially since this is one of their very, very few albums that not only will hook you with their lyrics and sound and songs, but it's just a generally well-made album, and it's almost comparable to the color and the shape. So for me, Medicine at Midnight is a 9 out of 10. This is an exceptionally made album. This is a great 10th album. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see and hear more from Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters in the future. I would love for them to cover a Nirvana song, but if they never do, that's fine. I understand that he is always forever going to be depressed over what happened with Kurt and, Kurt and the Courtney thing and the whole Nirvana. I respect that. If you never cover Nirvana, that's okay. Nobody is going to criticize you for that. But overall, as far as Medicine at Midnight goes, listen to it. No matter what, no matter how, listen to Medicine at Midnight. It's a 9 out of 10. The color and the shape is a 10 out of 10. Medicine at Midnight is a 9 out of 10. Still almost comparably perfect as color and the shape. So overall, 9 out of 10, Medicine at Midnight. Thank you.